one throne, one chair, angakona unwana. Inena ntena ni bula, inena yatinena, pula. The champ is here and I to defend his title, to put an end to your defeat cycle, to humble the ignorant and to exalt
the recording has begun. So the whole motivation, so recapping on the discussion of different factors that have contributed to the destruction of Black civilization. So it's very interesting how people had to bring up the fact that religion is a white man's, Christianity is a white man's religion, basically suggesting that if it's a black man's religion, then why should we oppose it? And therefore, which is also a bit problematic, because to think that the way we look at history and to think that everything our ancestors did, we are supposed to uphold and embrace as rather backwards. I mean, if we are true students of history, we know that African history was not all roses and what's the word? Yeah, it was not all a rosy path in terms of our ancestors' development or lifestyle and everything. So the thing is, within Africa, historically we had high culture and we had your lower type of culture, if you can put it that way. So a lot of the times when we highlight various factors of our history, we focus on the high culture, hence the civilizations that we always highlight, whether it's the Mali Empire or the Songhai Empire or the ancient Egyptian, the Mapungubwe, Great Zimbabwe. So all of these, the reason why there is a lot of highlight on these ones is not because they are black. It's not just because they are black. It's not the main reason. But the key factor of why we glorify or we uphold these civilizations is because they represented high culture. And so high culture is something which we did not begin with as humanity. Our ancestors went through. In the beginning, before our ancestors invented agriculture, we were obviously not pastoral nomads, and as pastoral nomads, we had ways that were not progressive, because a person's lifestyle system also advises their behavior. So pastoral nomads were not inherently evil. It's just that their lifestyle advises them to behave in a very barbaric way, And having mentioned the word barbaric, so in the course of with the protests that are happening in South Africa currently, there is a tweet where I actually use the word hooligans to describe people that call themselves protesters that are throwing stones at motorists, and people were started catching feelings for that, which I found very hypocritical, because when we were addressing the Christian or rather the religious factor, when I explained that the reason why, because Christians would justify why we should not abandon Christianity. They explain that in Christianity there are these values of the 10 Commandments and all these things. and which we then explained to them that these originated from the high culture of our ancestors, of the agriculturists, not the pastoral nomads. Pastoral nomads basically copied those, but the fundamental culture of the pastoral nomad is not something we should embrace, because they have a culture that says a culture of envy, because if you sit around watching your brother digging into the soil during the times of the early rains, you look at him and call him a slave of the soil, as even the biblical mythology always portrays working or tilling the ground as eating from the sweat of your own toil, as if it's some kind of a curse. But obviously we know that they were trying to obviously speak against the agriculturists, and hence faith is equated to birds, because it says, do not worry about what you will eat, for your heavenly Father provides for these birds. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns. They use that phrase because sowing, reaping, and gathering into barns is the beginning of civilization. So they use that metaphor to as an opposition to their faith. So as the birds that do not sow, reap, or gather into barns, but your heavenly Father provides for them. So they were trying to model that as the holiest life, or the most sacred way of living, is never worrying about sowing or reaping or gathering into barns, which, if you think of any great civilization in Africa, it began with sowing, reaping, gathering into barns, in that order, because gathering into barns then introduces the whole factor of studying the patterns of the seasons, the stars, and from which we get astrology, and storage requires one to build. Architecture comes into play, or masonry, and so it then explodes and gives birth to all these disciplines, which are determinants of a high culture. It's where you, from the farmer gives birth to a metallurgist, because the garden instruments, the iron making was first. The need to make iron tools it arose from agriculture before anything else was made for iron or weapons or anything. The original need for having that technology was actually agriculture, for garden tools to be able to improve the technology of working in the ground. So we went through that, and we even presented the Christians with the contradictory riddles, and they tried to answer it and everything. And it was a good discussion. But through this whole thing, in the last phase, while we were discussing these things, I basically came to a realization that the second factor, which is what we're going to discuss today, so the fire and brimstone. So the fire being religion, and the brimstone being political or politics. By politics, I guess people, before people start bringing up arguments that are not in line with the discussion, say anything is politics when you get involved in community work, it's politics, or even family politics is called politics. But by politics, we are talking about the political space, politicians, political parties, and the people on the ground being used as pawns by politicians to fight their battles. I mean, politicians have been going at each other forever. It's the nature of Western politics, the dog-eat-dog world. I mean, anyone that has read Julius Caesar in school and everything, they know. Even when you look at ancient Egypt, when it was in the hands of the Greeks, when it was basically dead, it became more like the Western politics. There were a lot of assassinations happening. Cleopatra working with the Romans as well. This one killed this one, and that one killed that one. But prior to that, in ancient Egypt, we did not have that problem. In Kemet, there was an order of monarchy. The whole order of monarchy is an African system, which is very foreign to Europe. Yes, the Europeans have copied it and have made it look legit. That's why you have the British crown. But if you can trace its history, it's a very recent thing. The British crown is not old, and neither is any monarchy. So these are just concepts that they came and copied in Africa and figured, let's take it over. It's not the only thing. Many things which they copy from Africa. The concept of the gentleman, the concept of chivalry and romance, so-called romance. As the word romance refers to, if you look at the romantic languages, these are Western languages. So when you say someone should be romantic, you're basically saying they should be European. But the nature of the gentleman and chivalry, all of these did not exist in Europe prior to the Moors going into Europe and showing them, this is how a gentleman behaves, this is how you treat a lady and stuff like that. These all originated in Africa. But obviously the language we used, because now they wanted to own what we had founded and established, and then throw what they had started and established at us as if it all started with us. So the issue with politics, I remember I asked a question to the people that I was having a discussion. I'm trying to recall if it was a space or if it was on the timeline. When I asked the question, I actually asked it on the last space exactly, because we did touch on this whole political thing. I asked the question if they can name 5 things which political participation has contributed towards the liberation of Africa systematically post 1994. And the reason why I said post 1994 is because a lot of civil movements, which are movements that rise out of the community and not out of any political party, down in history get credited to the political party. So people tend to not be able to see a difference between the two and come to actually and walk around with the illusion that we need politics to be able to have these civil movements. But historically, we know that civil movements happened they did not rise out of politics, but the politicians are always very good at hijacking civil movements and whatnot. I asked the question, no one could answer it. Even on my TL, I asked the question post 1994. name anything. And no one could answer the question. But somehow people still wanted to insist on holding on to the concept of political activism in the sense of political parties and being affiliated to political parties and things like that. So, and there's a lot of, within this system, the system was first, it's working very well for Europeans because it's really served them. I can mention many ways how it has systematically served Europeans since 1994, or even, I could go even before that, but I just chose 1994 to separate the confusion, because every civil movement that happened in South Africa prior to 1994, any part of Africa, post-colonialism, post-apartheid, So, but no one can give the answer. But you can see that even though they can't answer it, they still wanna hold on to these things. And the reason for that is, as what I had described in the beginning when we were talking about the stronghold of religion being its power to trigger and activate the primal brain and shut down the neocortex. And for those that were not part of the discussion, the whole concept of the primal brain versus the neocortex is that human beings have those sectors of the brain, and they all serve a particular function. If you apply the neocortex during in an arena where you're supposed to apply the primal brain, you will be at danger, and vice versa. So when you are supposed to apply the primal brain and you apply the neocortex, I'll give the example of how you could find yourself in some deep kapwas, So what would happen, as an example, is we walk to the mall, we see a whole group of people, we analytical people, these two people, we're very analytical, we inquisitive, we want to know why, we like little children. I love children, because children ask why, and they keep on asking until the parents shut that thing down and say, stop asking questions, you're annoying me. And then they become like an adult who just follows. Children are not like sheep. That's why when you tell them 1, 2, 3, they keep quiet. They're adding. They're trying to add 1 + 1, and then later they'll ask the question, why? Why is this like that and that? So we like that. We like young children. We're very inquisitive, and we ask questions. So, but then we're walking towards the mall, and people are running towards you. You might be walking with your child. The first thing your child will ask you is, why are these people running? You are not gonna say let me explain to you, baby, why these people are running. You're gonna pull your child and say, let's run. You also don't know why they run, because at that time is not the time to apply your neocortex and trying to reason. If you do that, you go and want to go and investigate why the people are running. It might just not end too well for you. So the different brains are there for a reason, and they are to be. And intelligence, the intelligence is basically knowing when to apply what at the end of the day. And so when we then deal with things like logic and reasoning, and then someone applies the primal brain, that is not a sign of intelligence, unfortunately. And it acts to your disadvantage as a person, not to the other person that's trying to give you the light. I think sometimes people forget that when people share knowledge with you, they're not your enemy. They're not trying to, unless you are suspicious and do not even know how to, and you think, okay, this person might be pretending to be giving me knowledge. What if this knowledge is not knowledge, it's deception? And that can be a case when you, unfortunately, are not equipped with the skills to be able to analyze if something is a fact or not, because it is a skill at the end of the day, and one can develop it. I mean, people can come and tell you stories and say, this person did 1, 2, 3. And if you're an intelligent person, you can ask them questions, and the right questions. And from that, sometimes, not all the time, at that stage, you might find out they're lying, or at a much later stage and stuff. So it's a very useful tool. So when we speak of, so now I want to bring in how politics are very, I've actually discovered that the politics are much more, in terms of the destruction of Black civilization, why we are going to be staying in the conditions that we are in as Africans for still another 500 years, is because of these factors that we are talking about. These factors are discussed in the book, and they may not really be discussed in the manner I'm really presenting it, because I did not just read the book and just speak it out as a parrot. I analyzed, digested the information, and to show that I'm a student of Chancellor Williams, I started branching out, looking at it at a wider view, different angle. But he paved the way. That's how generational growth is supposed to be. Scholarship is a generational growth. I mean, within the young scholars that I follow, they lay a foundation upon, they walk upon the path which our predecessors, your Sheikh Anta Diop's and your Chancellor Williams and all of these, Theophilo Benga, your Dr. Yosef Ben Johanan, Ashwa Kwezi, etc., have laid a path for us, so we don't have to start from scratch. So what I have found is that why the religion is less of a concern for me now than politics is because religion is dying out anyway. Religion is tied to astrology. We are at the end of the age of Pisces, which results in the end of religions also, because even in the Bible, Jesus says, I'll be with you until the end of the age. It says in the Bible, he's going to be with you until the end of the age of Pisces. After that, even in the book of Luke, it says, when you see a man carrying a pitcher of water, follow him into the house that he enters. And if you understand biblical culture or Hebrew culture, Habiru culture, you know very well men don't carry pitchers of water. That is, it has to be, it's a metaphor, definitely. Even when Jesus goes by the well, you didn't see a man there, spoke to a woman, because in Habiru culture, men dig up the well, women go to the well to carry water. So a man carrying a pitcher of water there speaks of the age of Aquarius. And this is the age that will take over the age of Pisces. If you follow the great age, you will see that the age of Pisces is then followed by the age of Aquarius, the age of the water bearer. This is the age of enlightenment, because the age of Pisces was the age of our Lord, Anno Domini. When I say our Lord in inverted commas, Anno Domini, this was the age of religion, of Abrahamic religion. and it's represented by the two fish, and the two fish is submerged in water, and submerging in water signifies sleep. It signifies vibrations at a level of the primal brain. You're in sleep mode. You are unconscious. It speaks of unconsciousness, and the emotions that or basically the vibrations that rule within that realm are your emotions, your envy, your greed, your fear, and all these things. These are the things, because if you run into the mall and you see people running out, the first thing that's triggered is fear, and then fear then gives birth to believing. You believe there's danger, so you run. You didn't see the danger, you just believe you run. So the age of Pisces, and it's even seen throughout your biblical scriptures. The ministry of Jesus, it's not a coincidence that you see the ministry of Jesus is symbolized by the two fish all over. From when Jesus starts preaching, he preaches to who? To fishermen on a boat trying to catch some fish. And after using the boat to preach to them, he says, throw the net one more time. And he said, we've toiled all night and could not catch anything. And he says, throw it again. And they threw again, and a whole bunch of fish drowned the ship. And he said to them, I'll make you fishers of men. And right after, he feeds 500 men, undisclosed number of women and children. For a reason, they are not undisclosed. With how many? 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Or fish. 2 fish or 2 fishes, whatever the grammar allows. So, what you find there is, you see the pattern of the fish moving along like that. And then even when Jesus speaks to the Pharisees say, hey, give us a sign, bro. Give us a sign. And then he says to them, a wicked and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, but the only sign that shall be given unto it is the sign of Jonah in the belly of the fish, of the great fish, for 3 days and 3 nights. The fish keeps popping up. Some fishy right there. When Jesus dies and supposedly rises from the dead, the story is told. What is it? He eats a meal with his disciples. And what did he eat? Honeycomb and broiled fish. So this whole fish thing has been given out as a sign. I'm just giving a few examples, but you can see the pattern. And then right after that, I think it's in the book of Luke, where he says to them, if you see a man carrying a pitcher of water going into the house, follow him therein into the house where he enters. The house speaks of the how the 12. These are the 12 houses of the zodiac. This is the house of it's the house of Aquarius. So when he says, I'll be with you until the end of the age, the Habiru were predicting this. I mean, it's not rocket science. If you understand astrology, you can predict certain people that understand astronomy. That's why you can read horoscopes and people are like, yeah, I'm a Leo, I'm like this and like that. These things have been studied for years, and they understand how astrology has an effect on human beings, their minds, and not just human beings, on all heavenly bodies. I mean, when it's full, the moon has an effect on the ocean in terms of its tides. You know, the high tides and low tides of the ocean are influenced by the moon. So astrology is because everything within the universe has an effect on each other. The celestial, we are all celestial bodies the heavens, we are part of the heavens. We live in the heavens. There's no heaven somewhere else. The earth revolves around the sun. The sun is in heaven. The earth is part of the heaven. So, so hence I'm not concerned with Christianity, or Islam or Judaism. These are automatically dying out. Anyone who's been a Christian long enough, or especially during the 80s and 90s, not people that just joined now in the early 2000s. If you were a Christian in the 80s and 90s, you know that it's no longer the same. The impact that it had on communities does not have the same impact anymore. You don't hear of serious revivals which take over the whole community, the whole town. You don't hear of such anymore. People, giving their lives to Jesus 5, 7 times, 6 times, 8 times. So when I was growing up, everybody went to church at least once. It doesn't matter if you're a drunkard, at least Christmas Day you went to church. So there was that church had that authority, and during those days, Christians were not having space talks, discussing and arguing. There was no such thing about what you're trying to argue the validity of Jesus. No, everybody, even a drunkard, would say, we are all children of God. So who do these people think they are? So everybody, but today every Christian has heard about the questioning of religion, of whether is Jesus the only crucified Savior. We've heard of others as well before him, and in the 80s and 90s, Christians had never heard of of Black Madonna and child, and the virgin birth stories that predate Christianity. They had never heard anything close to that. But now they are part of this discussion because it is the wave of the heavens. Pisces is ending. So we don't really have to fight religion. We're not fighting religion. We are just a part of the transition. These conversations are part of the transition that is happening. It's happening whether people like it or not. The transition is happening. So it only depends on which side of the transition you are going to be at. Are you going to be proactive and be in the forefront of the transition, or are you just going to be following by with the change? I mean, this is how the world operates. There are people that are pioneers of change, and then there are those who follow the change, and then there are those who resist the change to their demise. So, but at the end of the day, when the time for change comes, it comes. There are various ways in which change comes. It's either there's a wave that comes in, and then sometimes human beings, through knowledge, can introduce a change even before its time. Hence, we have such things as this person lived before their time. They would speak of. There are many people that would say, "Oh, this person was ahead of his time," or something like that, because the universe does not block you from being ahead of your time. But then, generally, human beings are behind the times. If you look at any form of advancement, human beings in general usually take advantage of something that was if you introduce something today, human beings only fully take advantage of this thing years later. It could be anything. Technology. There was even I think there was a table that actually had an average years of, if it's technology, it's so many years. If it's a law implemented by the government, it's so many years for people to come into terms with the change. So most of the time, by the time majority of the people catch up with the change has long been here. That's why even in economics, a majority of the people buy a stock or a commodity when it's it's on its way up, when it reaches its peak, when the big boys and the big girls that started with it are now selling. That's when everybody, the majority of the people, the masses go and buy, when it's actually too late. It's not the time to buy. It happened in 2008. I remember in the property sector, around 2004, 5, 6, property, you could buy a property in the inner cities and flip it within a few months and get 100K. And then people started hearing about it. In 2008, majority of the people went in. And after buying that property, 10 years later, they couldn't sell it and flip it. So, yeah. So now in terms of so we've touched on religion.